Hey there, I'm Tracy Spear, speaker, author, coach, and head cheerleader for anyone trying to play bigger. Speaking of playing bigger and shifting out loud, I cannot wait to introduce you to my friend, Kuma Roberts. I'm going to give you the quick bio of Kuma. Kuma Roberts is the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Arrowhead Consulting, which is a boutique project management, leadership development, and executive coaching firm here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Kuma partners with CEOs, executives, and leadership teams to deepen their personal and professional commitments to celebrate diversity, champion equity, and cultivate inclusion. In addition, she serves on numerous nonprofit boards that align with her passion to ensure a vibrant and accountable world for all of us, including the YMCA, the Girl Scouts of Eastern Oklahoma, the Philbrook Museum. How about that Frida exhibition? And
Oh,
Racism Stinks. Have you been?
yes, I went
Okay.
yesterday.
Okay. All right. So, let me finish telling everybody how amazing you are. She was named the 2022 Pinnacle Award Corporate Businesswoman of the Year by the YWCA, serves on the City of Tulsa and Commission on the Status of Women, and is a 2022 Workplace Inclusion Advocate for Oklahomans for Equality, as well as the 2020 Keeping the Dream Alive Award by the Martin Luther King Jr. Commemoration Society. Oh my gosh, the accolades go on and on. I don't want him to wait any longer. I'm so grateful to visit with you. So I would like to welcome my guest today, Kuma Roberts. So
It's great to see you. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I want everyone, so most people will be listening to this, and I'm super visual. As you know, there's
Yeah.
giant boards all over in my office, but I want people to kind of get a sense of where are you sitting right now. And there's a story to that too. So you're sitting in an office. Yes. So
Yes.
that's what I can see. So tell me more. Where are you sitting today?
I'm sitting in my office around, Midtown Tulsa. I think my office is exactly who I am. It's a little bit chaotic. My desk is piled high with paper over here to my right. And I have a lot of random, let's see if we can see a little random things on the wall.
Nice.
I just have explosion. Everyone says, Kumi, you have all the color. I have the selfie station in my office. I have a lot of really beautiful things in the background that remind me of Tulsa and some succulents and my fighting nun over here in the corner over here.
I see her. I see
So
her.
just a variety of things that make me happy in this space.
Listen, and they are you. And I think that should be everybody's workspace that you
Yes.
walk in. I walked into your office a few times, not your new big office that you're in, but knew exactly who you were based on kind of what was in the office. So I love that about you. You're very, very authentically who you are. And I happen to know that there's been a few shifts to get you into this space. So
Yes. It's
let's
a good
go
part.
there.
Let's talk about it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So when you think of shifting out loud and those moments where you have been invited to play bigger, let's unpack today some that you invitations you didn't accept and some that you did. So let's just start that. First of all, what are some of the shifts that you have encountered in your lifetime or career, wherever you want to go? Let's go there.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously you've given us these questions a little bit in advance. So we get to think about it. And I would say recently, like a recent shift, something that's happened in the last 5 years was one that really stands out for me is the passing of my mom. I would say that that was a really significant shift as I think I always probably felt like I was a little bit in her shadow growing up. She was a big personality, a big woman, someone who truly was shifting out loud in everything that she did. And I think I was intimidated and a little worried, and it always lived in a place of pleasing her, wanting her to be happy, wanting her to be proud of me. And when she passed away, for as sad as it was, and as much as it took us all a bit by surprise, Tracy, it was the thing that was like the freedom for me to move into that next phase of my life. It was the freedom to sort of unapologetically be exactly who I am and live in purpose a little more. And so I think that's been a 4 year, a big shift about some things that shifted in my life. And I think that was one of them.
Oh my gosh. I have this as a question I was going to ask you, and
Yeah.
I did not tell you I was going to ask you about your mom. And I didn't know if we would go there. I love that we're starting there because I think there's a lot of people listening in that are raised with amazingly good intentions and parents that tried to keep us safe. And
Yes.
yet, that also now, the shift you're talking about, you look back on that, and that probably kept you playing a little bit small. What were
Yeah.
some of those messages that you received from your mom, Kuma, that you now look back and go, good intentions, but the impact on that maybe wasn't what she anticipated?
Yeah.
What would that be?
My mom was always someone who felt like that she needed to empower us to navigate a very white world. And she grew up in a time where, there was segregation, where she couldn't go to some local places here in Tulsa because she was Black, that she couldn't participate in. And so, to messages that I received from my mother were white people, are always looking to replace you. You need to just be humble and you need to be sort of in your place, know your place so that they can't ruin your world or impact your world in a way. She wanted us to sort of know how to live in the white space, if that makes any sense at all. But that was very much the messages I got. Don't mess up. They're watching. You have to work harder. You have to be sort of, uh, that stereotypical strong Black woman in order to navigate this world. And so that's what I believed. And any sort of acknowledgement other than that, Tracy, was something I felt like I was letting her down and that I wasn't being, what I needed to be. So
So I want to weep because I watched you. We've known each other for a while, and
yes.
I don't know that I know anyone that has made a more dramatic shift in the last 2 or 3 years than you, and I remember before you made the shift, the rest of the world was already seeing you on big stages and seeing you as larger than life, but the insides weren't matching the outsides, and,
No.
when you said what you just said, why I wanted to weep is I do think that we're gonna go there, we're totally going there. I do
Okay.
think that people of color are, based on what you have shared with me, so this is not me
Yes.
knowing anything, what you have shared with me and what you just said, there is that part of you, as you describe it, that blend in, don't make
Yep.
waves,
Yep.
don't and there's no
Yep.
way that doesn't make you smaller,
Yeah.
unintentionally, right? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was and for the longest time, I believed it. I believed that if I'm going to and not just believed it, had seen it come to light in my world. I assimilated, Tracy. I was the smiley, happy, properly speaking Black person in so many spaces, right? And it was like, "Oh, what my mom taught me is working," right? Keep your head down, don't make waves, don't look different, don't color your hair, be as a regular Black person as you can be, and you'll be successful. And so that had gotten me opportunities and opened a few doors that perhaps me being authentically me right from the start might not have gotten me. And that's just the honest truth. And so I think it started off well intentioned and I was trying to follow it, but there was an unhappiness, it wasn't aligning ultimately with what I needed to do, which was ultimately play bigger.
Mm.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I watched you stand on stage recently and tell a story that was so authentically you. And what I loved about that talk was, of course, everything you said was great. The audience loved it. Everybody's still talking about it. As your friend, what I loved about that is I'm going to be emotional. I watched you just fucking own who you were in that
Thank
moment. Right?
the scariest thing ever. It was the scariest thing ever. And
Tell me more.
it was a risk. I'm so confident, Trick. I can stand in front of anybody and I can talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I can talk about the business case. I know cultural competence. I understand all of these concepts. I can relate it to the business world. But when it comes to me personally, sort of disrobing in front of people and telling personal stories or something that's related to like why my mind is the way it is or why I'm thinking the way it is, that has been a real disconnect for me. And so um when I was asked, thank you, by you and the team at the Women's Leadership Summit to speak, I thought I want to do something different and I want to be a little bit more revealing about who I am. Where does who is Kuma? It was warrior women, right? Like our warrior mindset. Where does this come from? And my mark was to lead a bright, bold life. And I wanted to share why I hadn't up to that point, or what were some of those barriers for me leading up to that. And so telling the story about living in the space between was one of the hardest, but yet one of the most freeing experiences. And you're right, I've had a ton of feedback from people I never even met that day who are emailing me through LinkedIn and otherwise to say, I'm still thinking about what you said there, or I also have never lived out loud. I'm trying to get to that place. And so it was just a powerful exchange that it was better than I could have ever expected.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about the space between? Would you be willing to go back to that for a minute?
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite songs is that Dave Matthews song, "The Space Between," he kinda talks about well, the space between for me was living between my mother and her expectations of me and what she wanted for me. My own relationship with Blackness, being a Black woman with short hair and dark skin and, what that felt like in a world where I was having to navigate primarily white spaces and still be who I am, but also be a bridge between the 2 worlds, right? Black and white. Education, I don't have a college degree, but also dealing with my own sort of regret, of that, but also maybe that just wasn't my path. It's just sort of this, like, space between and trying to come to terms with all of that, and so that's what I talked about.
Well, what was the definition you gave us at the end that melted our faces off? What was it?
Well, when I was in Ghana, I went to Ghana last year and spent a couple of weeks. I had befriended a young man there, and he would end all of his correspondence with me with Natar. And I was like, what is Natar? What is Natar? Finally, I asked him, and he said, well, it means now all things are ready. And so there was just something really powerful about that, that now the path before you is ready. Now all things are ready. And so I really had taken that to heart after leaving that and came back and wanted to share that with you all at the conference.
So now I remember why NATAR is on this board. I now I'll do.
Natar, yeah.
I got you. Do you do a lot of visioning? Like, is that something that's a new muscle for you, or have you always been good at that?
You know what? I've been terrible at it, but it is a new muscle. It's a new muscle. And I will say that I'm leading more into it. I think when my mother passed, that was a little bit more like, okay, I can lean more into like my own kind of spirituality, something that resonates with me more so than sort of sitting in church every Sunday and like holding a Bible, which is very much my mother's, sense of being. And so manifestation, all of those things have really started to come into play. And while I consider myself someone who's still learning about that and really learning to push the limits of what my mind and what sort of intentionality, right, brings forth for someone from the universe, it's something I definitely believe in. And had that dinner not happened between you and I and the rest after that amazing women's conference, I don't know that I would have even gone as far as I have gone. I've got started to read The Secret, The Law of Attraction, and some other books to really understand how to harness that, or sort of manipulate that spirit a little bit better to get what I want in life.
That makes me super happy because I know if you play bigger, the people that you influence in an audience, like when you're up there speaking, people are leaning in, they are listening. And so I'm going to ask you that question. What's the big thing? What's the shift that you want your audience to have as a speaker? So when you're up on that stage and you're doing your diversity, equity, and inclusion work, or you're telling your story, what is it that you want people to walk out of there with? What shift happened?
Yeah, so I've actually thought about this a lot, and a lot of the work with regard to diversity, equity, inclusion, or whatever, it's really about self awareness, right? That sort of um, self-reflection in order to give yourself space and time to think through your next move. What do you want? What does success look like? Which is a question you give all the time. And I oftentimes struggle with even how to answer that. And I think what I want my audiences to hear, no matter what I'm talking about, is I want them to take the time for their own self reflection and self awareness on what they've heard from me. But then hopefully there's been some action that they can take in their own personal life, whether it's their feelings about how they're managing others as it relates to DEI, or is it about understanding their own limiting beliefs, which is something I struggle with a lot. So I want my honesty and vulnerability in those areas to be something that people feel, it resonates, and then they begin to do their own investigation of themselves because I'm also doing the same thing and can only just sort of share this awakening I feel like I'm going through, the shift into whatever is next.
Listen, you are shifting for sure, and but I think you're skipping like third and fourth gear. You're kind of went from second to fifth, which I love, and that shift though that happens, self-awareness is the exact right best answer because that's the hope, right? As a speaker, you say something and you want people to go, "Oh wow, I have
Mhm.
said master bedroom my whole life. Oh wow, I have said
Right,
I don't see color. Oh yeah, like
right.
so all of those things, and I want to make sure everybody knows you and I have been on calls together with organizations. You've been such a great source of information for me and a great friend. And you've let me be messy and ask silly questions.
Oh,
And you've
stop it.
always been a total no, like I
We can be
remember
messy with each other. That's what
right.
we
Well,
do.
I can't say for you. Yeah, you have been. No, just kidding. No, but I do think to have that partnership where I can call you and say, do I say African American or Black people? And like I think people, white people, so now I can speak, like collectively, we are just afraid to get it wrong. And you and people that are playing in this space to say you are definitely going to get it wrong, and that's okay. You
Right,
can get better. That's the
right,
invitation. Like I watch
right.
people say, "Oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I don't ever want to make that mistake again. So instead, I'm going to do nothing," and they retreat. And you are
Absolutely.
inviting them in. Yes.
Inviting them in is exactly the word, and all the time that I've worked with CEOs and leaders across different organizations, both here in Tulsa and across the nation, that fear comes through quite strong with a lot of the people I'm talking to. Well-intentioned, they get diversity, equity, inclusion. They have that shared language, but they are just fearful that we live in a culture of cancel, right? That no one wants to get called out, and everyone is in the state of it's really paralysis, Tracy, where they're just like frozen. Like anything feels like it's just like one moment of chaos or one moment of being called a racist. And so I've really started when I was working at the chamber that people need to not to flinch about this. Don't sort of wince about the work. It's time to get really fearless. And that's actually the working title of a book that I'm writing that I really am trying to encourage people to get out of that feeling of paralysis and get really fearless as it relates to approaching DEI for part of their competitive advantage.
I love that. I have a question for you. I wasn't going to ask you, but it just happened to me. So I was in a meeting and
Okay.
I heard somebody, there was an exchange happening. It was an intimate meeting. There were 8 of us. And my antenna is set and somebody used the term linchpin.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
I went to Lynch,
Mhm.
Lynch. And
Right.
so in my mind, I'm like, I can't let this like I'm overly sensitive. And so I looked
Yeah.
around the room. I watched a beautiful woman of color sitting there, and I swear to you, Kuma, she looked down like, and I was like, I need to say something here. I definitely need to say something
Wow.
here.
Wow.
And I didn't. And
Okay.
because the exchange was a little bit heated. And so anyway, so the meeting ends. I asked her if I could speak to her afterwards, and she
Mhm.
said yes. And after 15 minutes, she was still in this exchange, and I had to go to the next meeting, so I left. So I called
Mm.
Angela Sivedon, who was in the same
Oh,
meeting, and
yeah.
I said, "Did you hear that?" And she's like, "What?" And she goes, "Yes, I did. Yes, I did. What do you?" And so we both got online and realized linchpin is actually a pen that goes in a wheel. But
Yeah.
yet the fact that both of us were like, "Oh, what are you gonna do?" So that's a too long of a story, but here's my question. Let's say
Yeah.
it would have been a microaggression, which is
Yeah.
would have been an unintentional um, discrimination. What should I have done in that setting? I'm glad I didn't say anything now, right?
Right, right, right.
But what should I have done in that moment? Tell the audience what should we do when we hear somebody say something that we
Yeah,
think is
I
racist?
think you have a couple of different choices.
Okay.
The first one is one that I think you'd be really good at, is responding back with humor. Hey, let's be careful here. Maybe make a joke about it. Like, did you mean to say that in that context? Or hey, things are getting really heated, and I don't know that we need to think about our language. Maybe there's some
Ooh, I
jokes. So
like that.
humor is always one way to respond to that. Probably something I would do. It does deflect, right, a little bit of and makes maybe hopefully the situation not so awkward, especially if it's an unintentional microaggression, like it sounds like this was, right?
Yes.
Um, the other one is to ask for clarity, which I think, again, you do really well. Tell me more about that. Or, I wouldn't have figured that you would have thought something like that. I need some more insight on this because it's surprising that you would believe in that way or you would use that term or something like that. So that's another way that you could kind of get people to expand. And honestly, getting people to explain. You use the word lynch point here as we're talking about racial issues. I can't help but feel a little bit worried or concerned by the way you brought that up in this moment. Tell me more about that. Explain. And usually people are like, what? And then they can start to do their own self reflection and
Yeah.
awareness. So those are a couple of things that you can use in order to address microaggression. They're
I like
really
that.
hard and they're very insidious, which is why mostly people sort of making a bigger deal of this than not. And typically people are just they're not thinking at all. And
Yeah.
so
Well, I
I
knew
think what you did is probably right.
well, I knew nothing. That's what I did,
In
nothing.
that sense, I think it was right. I think
Yeah, yeah.
not to say anything.
Well, what I was gonna say, Leonelle Thompson, and her, she and I have this conversation. She actually said the next time something happens, and this has been a couple of years ago, afterwards, say, I want to tell you how I experienced that comment.
That's a good one.
Isn't that
That's
good?
a
I
great one.
loved that.
That's a
So
great one.
what we didn't talk about was what do I say when it's happening? And I'm not fearless, but I'm pretty close in those
Yeah,
situations.
you
You're
are.
right. I'd probably go to humor, but I think it happens often in the workplace, which, by the way, that's where we are more than anywhere else. That, by the
Yeah.
way, the number one place we experience racism is at work. It's
Yes.
not even on the street. It's not right. It's not our friends.
Right.
It's at work. So
Right.
I love that you're standing on stages and working with clients to try to get them to create some awareness in that. Do you find that people are more receptive to that now? Do you think that after the George Floyd murder, people stayed open to the conversation 2 years later? What do you think?
I mean, in many ways, I think they've stayed open to the conversation. I do believe that there is still that fear. And in many ways, that fear is even um, greater in people, that paralysis, because the stakes feel higher, right? If I speak here, it has this sort of ripple effect on so much more than just kind of this moment, what I'm saying now. And so people are extra cautious and they're rethinking and they're being a little bit more. Um, again, slow to act when really we need an urgent sort of response as it relates to that. But people are definitely open, but they need to know how to do that in a way that makes them feel not stupid, not racist, and to be part of a solution, not part of a problem. And that's just my approach to DEI is that people need to be thought of as the solution and not part of the problem.
Yeah. Do you remember the first right after that happened? You and I got on a call. You're going to remember this, of course.
I
And
do.
you were saying how tired you were. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And I was so mad at you. I was like, "Don't be tired. This is your time. Like, come on. Yeah,
Right.
inspire everybody." I was so naive in that moment, because I did not understand, nor can I ever understand what it's like to be Black. And I, in that moment, thought, "You can't be tired. You have to help teach everyone." And you took me to school, about how no, no,
I
no,
don't remember that. I did
I
not take
do.
you to school.
You did. You were like, and you got on that. You just said, "This is why I'm tired," and you explained that in a way that the takeaway for me, what I got from that conversation was, you know, you did not want to be the person that educated everybody, nor should you have been. And so after that happened, everybody was coming to you and instead of doing their own work. Do you remember all of that?
I
And that
do remember
you
that. I
struggled with
remember.
that for a while, if I remember.
I did. I still struggle with it because, I'm my mother's daughter, right? And it's someone who was basically groomed to navigate these spaces and be the approachable, diplomatic Black woman. And after George Floyd and events after, and it just keeps seems to happen every so often, right? Another Black person dies sort of unnecessarily at the hands of either law enforcement or otherwise, and I get tired of being the nice Black person, trying to defy the stereotype. Sometimes I wanna scream, sometimes I wanna yell, and sometimes I wanna tell you to get over yourself, right? I think that is the struggle that I had, and so when you said that, I thought, "Why is it always on me or on us?" Right? To sort of rise above and sort of get to the heart of the matter, which is educating people and trying to shift, not hearts and minds, but also policy and practice. That's a tough call to wake up every day in that space and be willing to with a joy and passion, right, that I want to have. And I think I do have inherently, but sometimes you're tired. And I
Yeah,
was tired at that time.
yeah. Well, I loved the shift for, our culture, right? It was and I've felt that shift deeply as everyone else did and did
Mhm.
things I had should have probably done before that, and started leaning
Yeah.
in a little bit more, paying a little bit more attention,
Yeah.
started marching. I did my first march, like, like
I
things
remember. It was
I
so
know.
good.
Well, listen, I think I was, passive in that, and to go from the back seat to the front seat and to, be more aware of that. I think that's the call to action for everybody that's listening in, right?
Agree.
This is something that everybody has to play their part to change kind of the way, we navigate, things. And listen, I wanna say this, you've been so good, even though you are tired. You have never acted tired. You've always been present, and you've always shown up for this Tulsa community. And I will say it's been so fun to watch you get a lot of accolades in the last year that were so well deserved.
It's hard. It's been wonderful, don't get me wrong, but it's like, is this my swan song? Is this the farewell from whatever you're doing? So it's been hard to sort of say, "Oh my god, I have so much to do and that
That's
I
right.
want to do and that is still left to do," and not feel like I've reached the pinnacle, right, after you've received the pinnacle award. So,
Yeah.
a little bit of a struggle in wanting to like, how do you top sort of the year I've had? It's been pretty incredible, and,
You do even more. That's what you
yeah,
do,
I'm
and that's
I'm
what you
really
will
working
do.
on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really working on it.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
your next shift, the shift that you just mentioned you're writing a book. Good for you. I
you.
want to unpack that
Thank
later with you when the audience isn't listening in. I want to figure out how to cheer you on to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that if you, I like that you're kind of getting introduced and maybe doing more around the manifestation. I wear a bracelet that says it's on its way.
Yes, I wear mine all the time.
Oh, I'm
It gets
order.
me today when I don't have it.
Well, I order my day every day. I start every day with what I want, and having an amazing
Real good.
conversation with you is on the menu this morning. And, I think that the next stage for you, if you think about as big as you could possibly think, that's
Mhm.
what's gonna happen for you because of not only who you are, but you have the exact right story in exactly the right time with exactly the right delivery. And I'm just literally continuing to cheer you on, my friend.
Thank you.
You're
I'm excited about what's to come. I think we both have so much on the horizon. I think everybody does.
I do too.
And I choose to really look on the bright side of that and know that it is indeed on its way because all things are ready, Tracy. Thanks for your kind words. You have been a friend and a mentor for a really long time. And you asked a question in one of our last podcasts I don't know if it made it on the air, but you were like, "Why aren't we closer?" Do you remember that? And I
I
feel like you've
do.
made it a huge effort to really get to the heart of some of those things. And look beyond, you know, a lot in order to mentor me, and so I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to say what that means because, like, I think I was not factoring in your experience and I just kept showing up like, and you sometimes accepted the invitation, sometimes didn't. I sometimes did. And so I'm just glad that you're in my orbit. And I'm glad that you're part of my ecosystem.
Thank
And a giant thank you for taking a little time today. And we'll do it again soon. And
you.
I appreciate you. Couldn't love you anymore.
Thank you, Tracy.